Hi,
Oh,
I'm Anna Mackey. I'm the Director of Program Services with the Bobby Dodd Institute. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with y'all this evening to talk about family support services. I do have a slide deck here, so let me see. I should be able, can I share this?
don't think so. I think I have to. Oh, there you go.
Let's see. There we go. Can y'all see that? Is it working?
Yep.
Yay, it's working. Awesome. So here we go. So Bobby Dodd Institute is a nonprofit organization. It's been around for quite a while. Our focus is promoting financial independence and sustainability for individuals with differing abilities. And we do that through a number of different ways. Primarily, we do that through employment. So what you'll see on the next slide is how we have an employees division and we have an empowers division. Certainly our overarching vision is to promote an inclusive world where everyone can be as independent as possible, living intentional, purposeful lives. So that's what we love to see. Um, Two divisions. So BDI employees has not just our warehouse, but we have a number of different federal contracts, other contracts with different employers, not just in Georgia, but across other states as well. So this is really the lion's share of what BDI does, but in support of all individuals, we have the BDI Empowers programs. So the Empowers program that's our way of being holistic with our service offering. So we're trying to identify those types of programs that are going to help provide the necessary supports to lead those lives. And that's what brings us to family support services, because you can see these are the Empowers programs. So we have family support services, benefits navigation, behavioral health, jobs and career services, and we're home to the Georgia Community Trust. So the Family Support Services Program is what we're going to focus on tonight. Individuals who are part of Family Support Services through BDI have access to our benefits navigation program, as well as the behavioral health program. So lots of neat programs at BDI. It really is a cool place, I gotta say. But let's focus on family support. And so what I'm going to try to do this evening is provide you with the full landscape of what family support is, how it works, how do you apply for it, what's the eligibility criteria, all those things. Fundamentally, at its core, family support equates to funding for services. And so a lot of my spiel is, every individual with disabilities, they need three things. They need some form of income, some form of health insurance, and some level of services. So when we talk about individuals who are transitioning into adulthood, we talk about Social Security and health insurance like Medicaid, but then we talk about services. And so a lot of individuals are familiar with the now comp and other Medicaid waivers that are through the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, but not everyone is aware that there's this other little program called Family Support Services that's in the same family of service programs. So family support, like the Now Comp waiver, is a state-funded program, funded through the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. Now Comp and all Medicaid waivers are split funding. So anyone who's on a Now Comp waiver, they're going to receive those services and blended 66% federal dollars, 44% state dollars. In contrast, family support is all state-funded dollars. So any Medicaid waiver, that's using Medicaid dollars. So it's in the same family because all of these service programs are managed and funded through Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. We lovingly call that DBHDD because we love our acronyms. But family support is unique in that this is purely state funded. So what that means is that when there aren't enough services, we lobby our state legislators to fund these programs. So where did family support begin? So family support is a safety net program. And I'm sure many of y'all are aware that there's a big planning list. So over 7,000 individuals are on that planning list. And Georgia historically has always had a lot of individuals on that planning list. And even after the Olmstead decision, which, that's the law of the land where individuals with disabilities have the right under Americans with Disability Act to live full and independent lives outside of an institutional setting. The whole point of a waiver is that we're waiving that institutional setting in favor of receiving those services in a home and community-based setting. So that's what a Medicaid waiver really is. But a lot of people don't realize that family support emerged because the state wasn't doing as well as it should in terms of funding those waiver programs. So because there were so many individuals on that list waiting for services, family support was developed as a safety net so that individuals can have access to at least a little bit of services while they're waiting for those more robust, comprehensive services through those Medicaid waivers. So you want to view family support as a service-based program that's managed through state dollars, through the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, and that it's a safety net for all those individuals who are on the Now Comp planning list. Where this is important is because if you're on that planning list and you're like, okay, I've been waiting for a long time, he's been on the planning list all these years, the criteria to be awarded a waiver is to show that you're most in need. So family support does two things. It first gives you a little bit of help because the level of funding isn't as robust as a waiver, but just still, a little bit is better than nothing, right? So you get a little bit of help, but what you're also doing is you're demonstrating to the state that you are maximizing all available resources, and that brings you closer to showing that your loved one is most in need. So at such time as they're transitioning out of school system into adulthood, you have a greater likelihood of being awarded a waiver if you're using family support funds. Again, because it's good that you have some money to use, but you're showing the state that you're using all those available resources. One of the things that I see is when individuals are talking to their planning list administrator, or excuse me, planning list navigator, about where am I on the planning list? One of the first things that they're going to ask is, well, are you using family support services? And if you say no, well, you can see that the ball is going to be right back in your court because that expectation would be that you're utilizing these resources. It's also an advocacy strategy because if you are maximizing your family support services, you can basically do a gap analysis. You'd be like, okay, these are all the services that we have, but here are the services that we need. So in order to actually meet our need, we're going to need that higher level of service that's only available through a waiver. So it's harder to make that argument if you're not using family support services. So family support services is to me, a square one. Everybody needs to be utilizing family support services. So let's talk about traditional family support. So this is the most common core program of family support. And individuals can start family support as early as age 3. So we basically see individuals beginning with Babies Can't Wait, and then they transition from Babies Can't Wait right into family support services, and then down the road, they would transition into a Now Comp waiver. So you can maintain your family support as long as you're going through the annual renewal process. So you apply once and then you renew each year. You can start as early as age 3. Once you're awarded a waiver, it actually takes a little bit of time for that waiver to become finalized. You can still maintain your family support services. Our baton passes at the point in time in which you have an ISP with a waiver. So you can be on the planning list for a waiver, be awarded a waiver, going through all of those processes to finalize the waiver. And then once you're at the end and you have that ISP and you have your budget, that baton passes from family support funding right into now comp funding. So that's pretty cool. So how much is traditional family support? So remember, this is services. So it's not $3,000 in your back pocket. It's you generally have an allocation, and every program is going to, every provider of family support may run this a little differently. At BDI, we start with an allocation. Some providers are able to provide the full amount of funding at the very beginning. So providers vary with their processes and management of the program, but the program cap for traditional family support is $3,000. Again, this is per year. So you run on a fiscal year basis of July 1 to June 30th. You have an ISP, and then you're going to have different services. So there are multiple services, and they all have their own service caps, but the program cap is $3,000. One thing that's a distinguishing characteristic between family support and now comp is when you're applying for now comp, you provide the psychological evaluation. Same thing when you're applying for family support, you're going to provide that psychological evaluation. But what you're screening for family support is different. We don't look at severity and impact. We only look at eligible diagnoses. So eligible diagnoses would include Down syndrome, autism, cerebral palsy, global developmental delay. Most developmental delays would be considered as an eligible diagnosis. There are some conditions that don't quite muster the severity, such as ADHD. So if you have just a standalone diagnosis of ADHD, you're not going to be eligible for family support. But most individuals are going to have an eligible disabling condition if they're receiving an IEP in school. There was a myth that if you have an IEP, you're automatically eligible for family support. Yeah, let's debunk that myth. Because you could have a specific learning disability or other health impairment and be eligible for an IEP, but not be eligible for family support. So what they're really looking at is eligible developmental disabilities without necessarily showing impact of those disabilities. And what I mean by that is let's use autism as an example. So there are varying levels of autism. So I can have an individual who, by virtue of the diagnosis of autism, that's an eligible diagnosis. The DBHDD treats autism as a condition closely related to an intellectual disability. So we automatically have eligibility for family support. In contrast, under a now comp waiver, the eligibility, they're going to look at severity and impact. So they would look at the individual's adaptive function scores, cognitive function scores, etc., for that determination of eligibility for now comp. So it's possible that we have individuals who are eligible for family support who are not eligible for now comp. Every individual who is eligible for now comp is eligible for family support. So just something to keep in mind. But again, if an individual has Down syndrome, all you have to do is show the documentation of Down syndrome. The preferred documentation is a psychological evaluation, not a letter of medical verification. So if you just submit a letter of verification of trisomy 21, they're going to, yeah, we appreciate that. We're going to add that to the file. However, what we're really looking for is a psychological evaluation. It's not because they're assessing severity, it's just that that's their preferred documentation for eligibility for family support as well as for now comp. What services are covered under traditional family support? So the most common service that we see is probably recreation and community integration. And the recreation community integration is a fancy way of saying day program, summer camp, pretty much anything in the community, dance lessons, taekwondo lessons, swimming lessons, you name it, horseback riding, all those types of activities would fall under recreation and community integration. At BDI, we allow memberships. So we fund memberships for gyms like LA Fitness. We fund memberships for Zoo Atlanta, Georgia Aquarium, the museum. So there's a number of different types of services and programs that are covered under recreation and community integration. Community living support means having a care provider at home. It doesn't necessarily mean residential. It just means having somebody in the home, providing some support for those in-home activities of daily living. So we also see community living support as a common service. Specialized medical supplies, as well as incontinence supplies, nutrition. These are all common services. Probably from a budgetary perspective, we probably spend and slightly more under recreation and community integration, and then right on the heels, that would be like incontinence supplies and SMS and nutrition. There is a service category for transportation, also for respite. Respite, this is a little wonky. Respite is with some programs or providers viewed as a program as well as a service. So what that means is there are actually different funding levels for family support and respite. So on paper, in theory, an individual could have $3,000 in family support and under traditional, about $4,000 in respite. So it looks really great on paper. The real life issue is that we're never funded enough to cover all of that. So what you typically see is all the different providers like BDI are given a budget from the DBHDD and basically told to manage as well as we can. Don't go over budget. Try to spend all the money, but don't overspend, and serve as many people as you can. And so that's it's a very philosophical question. Should we serve a few people really well, or should we serve as many people as we can, as much as we can? And we tend to lean towards the latter part of that. So we have at BDI a little more than 750 participants in the traditional family support program. So not everybody gets the full allocation. Everybody is able to receive the $1,500 initial allocation, and then we have our little stopping points throughout the year, like how are we doing on our funding? And then as individuals have additional needs, we provide funding on that needs-based approach. So again, every provider is likely to manage differently. I'm just sharing the BDI way of how we're managing that. So remember how I mentioned that there's a program cap of $3,000, right? But within that, some of these service categories also have a service cap. So, for example, recreation and community integration, its program, the program cap is the same as a service cap. So I could, if I had $3,000, I could use all $3,000 towards recreation and community integration. But transportation has a service category cap of only $1,200. So even though I have an initial allocation of $1,500 with potential to get more funding, the most I could ever spend on transportation would be capped at $1,200 because of that service category cap. So when we're managing this, and this is something that we share with our participants as we develop the ISP, is like, here are the service categories that you've chosen that, that you need, but here are the caps that go along with that so we can manage that money appropriately. I didn't list behavioral support. So behavioral support is a service category under traditional family support, and it has a service cap of about 2,450, which is slightly less than the 3,000 mark. So it's just important to know, what services that you're going to have, what is your allocation, if any, like what's your budget, and then are there any service caps to that? It just helps you budget that process a little bit. So again, the program runs on a fiscal year, July 1 to June 30th. So, here we are, early June, we're like, woohoo, we got lots of participants. We're still getting some stragglers in with their renewals. We try to get the renewals in prior to the start of the fiscal year, but we try to give families a little bit of grace. So we're trying to finalize that process. And so starting July 1, we have ISPs in place. People can start using their funding allocations. Let's talk a minute about intensive family support. So a lot of folks don't know, first of all, there's a lot of folks that don't even know that family support is a thing. And then they don't know that there are two levels of family support. So we have traditional family support, which I've just described, but then we have intensive family support. And what intensive family support is, it's a much higher level of funding, but look at this as my emergency care, my crisis care, my absolutely most in need care. So remember how I said I got a little more than 750 folks under traditional family support? Probably only got about 115 in intensive family support because their level of needs are so high. And most of those individuals have been awarded a waiver, and we're waiting for that waiver to be processed. So they're either pending a planning list administrator, waiting for that PLA to be assigned, or they have a PLA and they're in that process of selecting a fiscal agent and a support coordinating agency and doing the self-directed training and all those assessments and developing an ISP. So once you're awarded a waiver, it usually takes about 8 months after you've been assigned a PLA to get everything squared so you're actually receiving those services. So we have a goodly number of individuals that have been awarded the waiver, and they need that higher level of service. Here's the thing about intensive. It's a much higher level of service. You can see the most common plans I have include $10,000 in in-home care, plus another 6,250 in respite. Plus, I might have somebody who requires SMS or incontinence supplies. It's another 3,000 respectively for those, plus nutrition, another 3,000. So it's not uncommon for us to write a plan that's upwards of $20,000 under intensive family support. But here's the thing. It can never be used for community access. And this is a real rub for families because I have a lot of individuals who need that day program. The day program is not covered under intensive. So there's some hard choices that have to be made. And I did my best to advocate for day programs. Like, if we can't get all community access, can we at least get day programs under intensive? And I got a pretty clear no. I was also advocating for dental. I was advocating for behavioral health because these are some of the areas that I think are most need for individuals, and I was not eligible for that. So intensive family support, much more limited in terms of what the services are, but the level of funding is much higher. The thing to know is that this is a short-term temporary program. And while you can apply for intensive family support on our BDI website, every application has to be pre-authorized by the DBHDD. So BDI, as a provider, we're not unilaterally able to just accept people into intensive. We have to go through some extra hoops with the DBHDD to secure prior authorization for participation in intensive. But it's good to know that intensive is there. And this is This is another reason why I want everybody to be on the Now Comp planning list, because you have to be on the Now Comp planning list in order to receive intensive family support. It's not necessarily the case with family support, with the traditional family support, but intensive, that's the first question. Are you on the Now Comp planning list? Yes. All right. Now we're going to see if you meet that criteria for most in need, but you don't get past go in intensive if you're not on the Now Comp planning list. And for this reason, I have changed my advocacy strategy when I'm talking to families. You know, I used to say, oh, you could probably wait till around 14, to get on the Now Comp planning list, because then we'll have a better idea of, what kind of trajectory they're on. And now I'm like, as soon as you have a psychological evaluation that meets the criteria, let's get them on that Now Comp planning list, just in case. I would rather everybody be on the planning list and have that safety net in case of some type of cataclysmic event. So I see a lot of cataclysmic events where I am really scrambling way behind the eight ball, trying to get people through the system because they're in a crisis situation. So the more that you can kind of prepare that safety net by making sure that you're on the Now Comp planning list, and then utilizing family support, if you're already in this system, makes it a lot easier to get a higher level of services for you. So how do you get started with applying for family support? It's every agency has its own way of doing things. I'm just going to put that out there. So every county has at least one family support provider. Some counties are going to be able to offer a choice. So if you I live in Gwinnett County. So here in Gwinnett County, the providers include BDI, it includes In Community, and it includes Viewpoint Health. If I'm in Henry County, my only provider is McIntosh Trail. So it depends on where you live. These the providers are based by county and region. So we would need to look at what county you're in, who are the providers, are they accepting applications? And if so, let's get that application started. So the first step, identifying the agency. Secondly, completing that agency application. So at BDI, we try to be as efficient as possible. So we have an online application. So you can upload that psych eval, upload other documentation that the state requires. The state's going to require, they want to see an ID, they want to see lawful presence. So if you have Social Security, they want to see that. If you say your loved one is 20 and you have guardianship, they want to see the letter of guardianship. So there's, I call it the little scavenger hunt. There's a number of things that you have to submit, not just for Now Comp, but also for family support. Because remember, it's managed by the same organization. And even though it's a purely state-funded program, it's following a lot of the same documentation requirements. So you complete the application, you upload all of your documents. Once we have a completed application, we submit that application to the DBHDD. The DBHDD has to sign off on every application. And that's one of the reasons why we like it online, because we have the opportunity to provide access to our online application to the DBHDD, so they can go into our system and just clickety click the approvals. So yay, that makes it a little faster. So you get the approval from the DBHDD, and then you sign a service agreement. So the service agreement's a couple of pages, has all these little areas for you to initial, and you're like, what am I signing my life away to? Fundamentally, what the service agreement is saying is you can only have one provider. Okay, so you can't double dip. If you're in Gwinnett, you can't have services from BDI and In Community. You got to pick a provider. So that's part of it. And then the other part of it is, remember how I said that family support ends at the point that you have an ISP with a waiver, right? Well, we've had some instances where somebody is actually receiving a waiver, receiving services under their waiver, but they're still in family support. That's a no-no. So that service agreement is basically saying one provider, one provider only. And once you have transitioned to now comp, you are no longer eligible for BDI, or no longer eligible for family support. So that's what the service agreements are basically attesting to. So once you are approved and we got the service agreements, we have a process for assessing your level of need. So we have it's pretty easy. It's an online, you click through, but what we're trying to figure out is what are your primary needs? And we call that a donor, as a determination of your need. So we have the registration link and then the donor, and then from that, we're able to develop that ISP. And so in that ISP, we're identifying, remember how there's all those service categories, right? So let's hone that down. What are you planning on using your funding for? Is that recreation and community integration? Okay, so let's have recreation and community integration on that service plan. So we hone in on those primary needs for the service plan. Once you have a service plan that's developed, then you find a provider. So BDI has a vendor list. So we have a process whereby individuals become vendors, companies become vendors. And the way we have that set up is that there are certain documents they have to provide, because again, this is government. So there's some qualifying documents that they would need to have as a provider. Once they are an approved provider, then again, so let's say you have your ISP and then you get the vendor list, and then you can sort through that vendor list to make sure that the person that you want to utilize for services is on that vendor list. So let's play that out. So let's assume that you're with BDI. Let's assume you got traditional family support and that all you really want is recreation and community integration because you want to be able to send your child to camp. So you have your camp provider out there. You find that they're the vendor suite. Generally, we encourage our vendors to request a copy of the ISP so that they know that, yep, this is this current year. We've had people who fail to renew and they'll provide a vendor with an old ISP. Like, yeah, that was from 2020. Let's not do this. We need one this is 2025, please. And now this is a FY26, fiscal year 26. So that's what the vendors are going to be looking for. So that way they can confirm, yes, my service is approved on your ISP. And then once you utilize those services, it's the vendor that's submitting the invoice. So you're not submitting the invoice for payment. You select off of our vendor list, the vendor is going to be submitting that payment for you. So again, other providers probably do it differently. This is how BDI is doing it, just to give you an illustration. Some important things to remember, and I just underscore that every provider has their own process. So as well as their own availability. So I know with BDI, we're currently waitlisted for traditional family support. Here in Gwinnett, Viewpoint Health is still accepting applications, and in community is also accepting applications. So one of the things I tend to encourage folks to do, if you live in a county and you have multiple agency providers in that county, check in with the provider. Hey, y'all have a wait list, and who has funding is basically what you're asking. And so if you have a choice between two providers and one has a wait list and one has funding, where do you think you should probably go? Right. Having said that, so once you have a plan in place, that doesn't mean that those monies are earmarked for you. So funding is not guaranteed. Generally, and at BDI, and then this may be different at other agencies, we provide funding on a first come, first served basis. So there may be individuals who who don't end up usually funding because they are having difficulty finding a provider, which is why we have support coordinators to help you find a good provider. But the funding's can run out. So I know this was an issue when we had people coming into the program late in the fiscal year. We usually exhaust funding by March or April. What I try to do is I try to have like reserves. So I have funding available, and then I have my little emergency stash just in case there's some crisis cases that I need to be able to fund. Because once we have our budget from the DBHDD, they are not necessarily going to provide us any additional funding. There is a remote hope that at the end of the fiscal year, that other family support services providers have not utilized their funding, and occasionally we will get this last minute windfall. So if you're receiving family support through BDI, it's kind of confusing sometimes because we'll say, okay, you've met your allocation, and we're freezing everything right now. And then, sorry, we don't have any funding available right now. And then 2 months later, yeah, we got funding. You're like, well, where did that come from? And that can come from because we can now tap into our emergency stores, because we didn't have any crisis cases. So that's a good problem, right? It can also mean that we got a windfall. It can mean that another provider somewhere in the state didn't utilize their funding, and so we got that windfall. So those are the moments when I feel like I'm Oprah, and I'm like, who wants to go to camp? And trying to, make sure that, we spend down the funding. I don't like leaving money on the table. And, here we are, we just finished the fiscal year. We used over 99% of our funding in traditional family support. We want to make sure that we're serving as many people as we can, but as well as we can. And again, remember that respite is a program and a service. And I know if you go to in community, you will see the family support services program, but then you'll also see respite as a program. So every agency has their own way of doing things. So, that could be an interesting opportunity if you're in community, that you could have the family support plus the respite. So that's just an interesting option. What we just try to remind folks, we remind our vendors as well, that again, the funding's not guaranteed. It can run out. And just because you might have, theoretically funding left because you haven't utilized your full allocation doesn't necessarily mean that, there's funding available. So I think that's just an important piece to keep in mind. So BDI and family support, remember every provider has their own process, and who are we serving? In traditional family support, mostly Region 3, Clayton, DeKalb, Fulton, Gwinnett, and Rockdale. And they're intensive, we're able to serve anyone in any region. So we're able to serve all regions in intensive at this time. Okie dokie. I can open the floor to questions, and quick plug. We do have an opportunity if you want to learn more about other benefits. You can go to our website, click on the benefits navigation page, and you can get a free initial consultation. Yeah, you get some extra time with me. Woohoo! And seriously, it's a great opportunity for you to, if you want to get a couple of questions asked and you don't want to go through the whole application process, just going through that initial consultation, super easy peasy. All right, so let's answer some questions. What you got?
I do have a question. I actually have two questions. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. My first question is, with the gap analysis, is that something that we like do with, like, say, Bobby Dodd, and then we would, or is that something that we need to like tell our planning list navigator to be like, I would like to do a gap analysis, right? Because our son, he aged out in May, so so that's why I don't know, who do I do that gap analysis with? Would I do with Bobby Dodd, or would I tell my planning list navigator?
Yeah.
Like,
Is this Angela
yes, this is
that's
Angela.
asking? Is this
Yes,
is this about Caleb?
yes. Hmm.
Um, so he's receiving traditional family support, correct?
Correct. Hmm.
So because he's receiving traditional family support through BDI, what I would recommend, if you haven't already done so, is we do a level of need assessment and it takes me 2 hours to do a
I
level of need assessment. Okay.
yes, I did
And
recently
you
do one
did
of
that.
those. Yes.
Okay. So then once you do that, that that should reveal your gap. Okay.
Okay.
So based on that, look at what was the significant supports, what were moderate supports, look at the recommendations at the end, so it's very different. We're going, I need a waiver to like, okay, I need, he needs a day program. So we need 30 hours of community access group and we need some supports at home. Well, how many hours? Well, let's look at what's the assessment say. So that should the recommendations from that assessment should drive what your needs are and then subtract what you're getting from family support. That's your gap analysis right there. So then that's when you have, who is your planning list navigator?
Miss Levy or Levy, Levy.
Okay. Okay. So I love her. She's cool. Her MO is you want to be able to share enough information with her to make her say, oh, wow, 3 times. And I've told her, I said, anytime somebody, you say, oh, wow, 3 times, they move forward with the waiver. She says, is that true? I said, yeah. So you have to, and this is where it's hard for the parents because first, this is our norm. So this is just how we live our life, right? But we have to look at how we are living our life in relation to how neurotypicals are living their life. Like there are a lot of things that we're doing that they're not doing. That's why we need more support, right?
Mhm.
And the other challenge that we have as parents is we tend to be strengths based. I love telling everybody how cute my son is. He's just adorable. He's so sweet. He's got this wonderful memory. He's got all these fun, wonderful things that he does. But then there's that dark side, where he's adorable 95% of the time, that other 5% you need to duck and cover. So if I'm having my conversation with the planning list navigator, I need to dwell on that 5% duck and cover. Right? I need to focus on my needs. I need to focus on not a strengths-based conversation, but a needs-based conversation. My personal advocacy strategy has always been fact-based with a tinge of hysteria. I think it's important to play that what if game, like
Mhm.
when we were advocating for my son's friend and her mom was a parapro and there were just some times after she aged out she couldn't be at home and dad traveled a lot and she had drilled over and over again, don't open the door, don't open the door. First week FedEx comes by, rings the doorbell, she opens the door. Nothing happened, thank God, but it could have. So
Sure.
that's where you take that potential, that there's a risk there. It doesn't have to happen for it to not be a risk. She could have disappeared. There was a risk there.
Right.
So, and then that's where you shift the burden to the DBHDD. You have knowledge of this risk now, so the ball's in your court. If something happens, do you want to be on CNN answering the question, what did you do? Why didn't you provide services? So, that does become part of your advocacy strategy. The fact that you're using, family support helps because I know they want to make sure that you're using that. But yeah, we need to, if he's aged out, we need to look at that assessment again and make sure that you're very clear on what your ask is.
Okay. And then that kind of ties into another question. So would you say, so right now we use his funding for like music therapy, right? Should I
Mhm.
switch because we are getting him, he's going to start a day program in August, like 3 days a week. Should I switch and, right, switch the funding to that to like show them like we don't have money for day programming and we're using our family support the little bit that we do receive to help, right,
Yeah, I
supplement,
hear
or does it
you.
not really matter
I hear
necessarily and it's
you.
just a matter
Yeah,
of like we use family support?
it's the latter. They're going to want to know, did you use family support? I think even if you used all the money on the music therapy and not a single dime for the day program, the need for the day program is still there. And that's where the
Okay.
gap analysis comes into play, is like, the reality check there for a day program that's 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's gonna ultimately be around $18,000, $19,000 a year. $3,000, even if you got the full allocation, completely for a day program, that's not gonna, it's a drop in the bucket. So there's your gap analysis. What you want to show is he needs this for stability. He needs a level of structure provided for the day program to help him self-regulate, to minimize any behavioral issues, and he needs the social stimulation, because the last thing that we want to see is that he regresses because he's socially isolated. So those are some of the things that you want to push, and that's what you want to document, when you start seeing like an uptick in behaviors or a little bit of depression, not wanting to do things because he's isolated. So that's something you would report to your planning list navigator, because
Okay.
that's negative impact.
Sure. And one final question, because I'll let other people talk. Would you say it's better to, especially now, some people are like, you need to start calling every week now, right? Like that's what I've heard, like because he's aged out,
For
and so it's like, but is
now,
it
that's
like, do you think email or calls, or like it doesn't really matter,
yeah.
but like to
There-
try to, push
I,
push a little
I'm,
bit, kind of.
I'm going to be honest. If you're calling every week and nothing has changed, that's not advocacy, that's nagging.
Yeah,
You're
I haven't
gonna,
done that. I haven't done that yet, but just, people
I'm
are like, you
just,
gotta do that.
I'm just
So
saying, I don't, there's this aspect of the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and I hear you, but you're either on their top of their radar or they're not. And being at the top of the radar is because of what their needs are. So what was my secret sauce for getting Eric a waiver when he was 21 is the fact, and I still, on my little cell phone here, I still have a behavioral record that I could tell you exactly how many meltdowns he had, on what day, what they look like, so I can do frequency, severity, impact, yada yada. I have documentation.
okay.
Documentation is the key. So
Okay.
it's that's what you want to share. So take a big step back, put yourself in the shoes of the planning list navigator who's talking to thousands of people. God bless them and all the work that they do. How do they make the determination who's most in need? And that's your ability to tell your story. That's where the advocacy comes in. That's supported by fact, with that tinge of hysteria. What could happen? Like at that time, this is pre-COVID, this is, years ago. And it's like, I can't leave Eric home alone. I have a cute neighbor 2 doors down. He's going to elope from the house to go knock on her door if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
there. And I tell them
Mm-hmm.
that, and they're like, "Ooh, that's not good." Like, he's 6 foot something, 250 something. We don't want that. It would be so easy for him to get misconstrued. See the risk, 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 risk. So your job is to highlight what the risks are. So especially if you're working with Delicia, she goes, "Oh, wow."
Okay. All right. Thank
Okay, who
you.
else
Yeah.
has questions?
I have a
Okay.
couple of questions, if it's okay. We're new to family support this year. We just applied for the first time. I realize you only get it through one agency. Should we be hedging our bets and applying to multiple agencies?
No, no,
No, just one.
because what ends up happening, and this is where it's sort of a tag it's at. So let's say you applied with BDI. And then like, okay, when I hedge my bet, I'm also going to apply it in community. Whoever submits their application gets in first to DBHDDs, like claim that spot. So let's say even if you were waitlisted with BDI, and even if in community had funding available, when they would try to submit their application, the DBHDD is going to go back to in community and go, no, they're receiving services at BDI. And anytime that happens, we have to discharge a person. So if you can change providers. You're not locked into a provider, but generally I recommend you change providers like at a fiscal year end. because very rarely are you going to be in a situation where you've used partial funding at one agency and then go to another agency, and then they're going to allow you to have funding there, because it's going to, in the behind the scenes stuff, that's going to be sort of an administrative debacle. So don't hedge your bets, because that's probably not going to work for you, because whoever gets that application in first is going to be kind of locked in the system as that provider. But you could then, so let's assume you've been, and y'all, it breaks my heart that I don't have enough funding for everybody, and it breaks my heart that I have a wait list and I've got 200 people on that wait list, and that keeps me up at night. I'm just going to be honest. So if there's an opportunity for you to get funding somewhere else, then get the letter of discharge so you can apply, okay? Because of course, I would love to serve you through BDI, but I would rather you get services somewhere than not have any services, right?
Sure. Two quick follow-ups. How long does it typically take to find out if you've gotten that funding after you've applied? So we weren't able to send it until July 1. And the secondary question is, what impact is the big awful bill going to have on funding?
Gotcha. So let's do the first part first. Sorry, I got hung up on big awful bill, and now I'm fixated on that. Let me address that one
Can
first
you
so I can purge
unshare
my
this?
brain. Yes,
Can you take the share off?
the stop share. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that better? Okay.
Thank you.
So about the big beautiful bill, remember that's a lot of Medicaid cuts. This is a state funded program, so Medicaid dollars aren't attached to family support. Having said that, we don't know what's really going to happen. If I had a crystal ball, I don't know if I would have the guts to try to see what's in that crystal ball. But I can tell you that DBHDD is taking a very here and now approach. And that's important for you to recognize for two reasons. For right now, in terms of how all businesses managed, is business as usual. So don't not apply because we don't know what's going to happen 2 years from now. So there's that. And also when that here and now approach is important to recognize from a waiver advocacy perspective, because as a mom, I am just as focused on my son's future, like what's going to happen next year, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, when I'm gone, to right now. All DBHD is focused on is here and now. So you can't talk about, well, he's going to need this or she's going to need that. It's, well, what does she need today? And that's where they wait for you to age out. They wait for their to, sometimes this is really scary. We wait for there's a crisis, because that's here and now and they can address that. And so I'm sorry, what was the first part of your question again?
How long should we expect to wait to hear after we've applied?
Okay. Sure. So in terms of how long would it take for the DBHDD to approve a family support application is going to be based on that provider's process, as well as whether or not an application was complete. So for example, I can have an application and I can have a letter of medical verification. Here's a letter, this individual has this condition, and I can submit that, and they're going, yeah, I really want a psych eval. So as long as we've got everything that's complete, it really only takes a couple of weeks for us to get an approval of eligibility. Okay, so let's make the distinction between approving eligibility for services and then approving and moving forward with services, because there's that ugly word again, wait list. So if I have funding available and I get you approved from the DBHDD, like, yes, we got a green light, then it's a matter of like, sweet, let's do the donor, let's do the ISP. So give that a week or so. I mean, it can be super, super fast. And then here's your vendor, and then you can start services, la dee da. Where things go sideways is first, if there's no funding available, so I got you approved, but I don't have any funding, so you're on the wait list, right? So let's assume that you have gotten approved and there's funding available, but you can't find a provider or, because I have some folks, again, we're serving people in all areas. I have a wonderful provider and like, yeah, I don't go that far. I.e. So, that can be a challenge too. So, you're going to hate this answer, but the answer is really, it depends, because there's a lot of variables that can impact the speed of application to service delivery.
Anna, we have a question on in the chat. Where can you find the providers for the counties?
You know what, Cheryl, how about if I send you that I have the DBHDD's list and it's by region, so I can send that to you that you can distribute after. Would that work?
So just so y'all know, we'll distribute that when we distribute the recording.
Yeah,
That
and
would be
I'll
great.
send you my
If
slides
there's
too.
anything else, I was going to say, if you want to send your slides, and if there's anything else that you think would be helpful to the families, that would be great.
You
I
know,
have
the
a couple
bottom
of
line is
questions.
y'all just need to do this. Family support is the lowest hanging fruit. And this is the easiest service to get because they don't look at severity and impact. They don't look at income. It's just, you got an eligible diagnosis. All righty then, you're eligible. So it doesn't take you that long to pull everything together. Just carve out an hour and just get that application in.
Sandra has a couple of questions.
Sure.
Hey there, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good. One question that I had was the IFSP that you were mentioning, how often is that supposed to be revisited and who is supposed to revisit that? Is it the person that's the contact for?
Right.
We're at Pathways, we're in Carroll County, so we're not eligible for BDI or in community. We have to go through Pathways.
Okay. So let me share what our process is for that to give you insight as to how that can manage. Okay.
Okay.
And I don't know how they do it, but you could say, does it work this way?
Mm-hmm.
So generally for traditional family support, we're gonna run an ISP from July 1 to June 30th. That ISP is going to be developed based on that donor that you completed and based on the questions that you answer. As we're setting up the ISP, we have a dedicated family support coordinator whose job it is to help you navigate the ISP, navigate the services, help to identify vendors and whatnot. So having said that, there can still be opportunities where we change an ISP, and that's called an ISP addendum. And so this typically happens, like we've had a number of cases where we've had something happen in the year, like significant behavioral changes or whatnot. And it's like, behavioral support wasn't on the plan. We need to add behavioral support on the plan. Or they haven't ever applied for now comp and they've aged out of the school and their psychological is super, super old. So let's add specialized diagnostic services so that we can pay for new psychological. So there may be a need, like a significant change or a significant need that warrants an addendum to that ISP. And so that would then be, so what you would basically do is you got your ISP, your job is to communicate. What makes it really hard, let me get on my soapbox for a minute. What makes it really hard for us to manage you don't reply back to us.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have a number of individuals that we still don't have renewals for. And last week I sent the dreaded letter, hey y'all, I'm about to discharge you. And I put in the subject heading reply required so that let's get this ball rolling. So your best due diligence as a participant is to share information, build that relationship with your support coordinator, let them know what's going on so that then if something happens you can go, hey, this is what we're dealing with, fill in the blank. Can we amend the ISP to reflect the service? change so that we can get that met, and that's how it works. We do that addendum, we add that service, we're able to process everything. You know, again, it's an annual basis, so you apply once. I don't have to submit I don't submit renewals to the state. Once you've been approved by the state through that agency, agent DBHD signed off on that, so I can just renew you year after year. But everybody should have a current ISP. Now, intensive is a little different. The traditional family supports run on a July 1 to June 30th ISP. Intensive is wonky, okay? Some intensive plans are only for 6 months. Some of them are full year, but they don't run on a July 1 to June 30th fiscal year. They run on a calendar year based on the moment that they were approved for services. So as soon as I have an ISP, it's July 10th. This is going to start on July 10th, 2025. If we were approved for a year, it's going to end on July 9th, 2026. So it runs a little differently.
Now, what exactly does your particular ISP specify? What does it contain? What does it look like? Is it multiple pages? Is it a single page document?
Now, you know, it's intended to be a person-centered document. You know, so it's not just these are the service needs and service categories. It's also what's important to the person, what's important for the person, what is the person like, what are their interests, what are, you know, and again, we do that in relation to with the donor. I don't know if every agency has like the ISP process plus a level of need process that's kind of merged. I don't know how Pathways does that.
Okay, yeah, because the IFSP that we get each year to fill out is just basically like um an addendum of the services and goods that you're requesting, that you're going to
Yeah.
be requesting for the year, but there's not anything, no, um, I don't know. I guess I was thinking it would be more like when you have an IEP meeting where you're going over all these different things, and it's not
Yeah,
with
right.
this provider.
Yeah, it certainly won't be as robust as an IEP. There are some similarities, you know, an ISP, and you'll see this with waivers too. An ISP should have goals on it. So you have
Yeah, no.
a service and you have a goal. You know, when you like graduate to a waiver, you know, you're going to have services under the waiver and you're going to have goals that are tied to that waiver as well.
Okay.
Well, I think we have time for a couple more questions. Does anybody else have any questions? I just want to make sure we get to everybody. Okay.
Those are excellent questions.
One more follow-up. If we
Yeah.
get denied or are put on a wait list, but we've applied for it, does that still show the effort that we're making so that when we do get on the waiting list / planning list, at least we've made the effort to get the family grant?
Absolutely. And in fact, remember my advocacy strategy includes that tinge of hysteria, right? So then you go, I'm on a wait list for a waiver, and I'm on a wait list for the safety net for the waiver. Right? You see, you can use that in your favor. It's like these agencies, you know, you don't have enough money for them, so my kid gets nothing. They're aging out of school. You know, we're losing all the structure. You know, how are we supposed to do this? This is something that y'all are supposed to do. You created family support because there were so many people on a wait list, and now I'm wait listed for that. Give me the waiver already. Ah, lose your mind. Let me just tell you a quick advocacy strategy is, you know, if you are super cool, calm, and collected during your interview with the planning list navigator, why are they going to have a sense of urgency? No, you gotta just like, oh my God, cry. Oh, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. You know, throw yourself under the bus. Throw your agency under the bus. I will cheerfully be thrown under the bus. You know, and it doesn't have enough people. Throw me under the bus. If it gets you services, I'm okay with that.
Can I record you doing that and then use that recording in the meeting?
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
feel sure that you could pull that out. So if there, are there any
Yeah.
other questions? Because if not, we're gonna, um, your voice is hilarious. But I would take advantage of Anna Mackey and her offering, through Bobby Dodd, for a free consult time. Um, she's a wealth of information, one of the smartest people I think, in this part of the world. So
Thank
please
you.
take advantage. I'm so thrilled that y'all came out tonight. This is such an important subject. And we will keep bringing them. The Down Syndrome Association of Atlanta and Gigi's, we're committed to bringing you this information. I believe our next session, and we haven't set the official date yet, will be about guardianship and supported decision making, and we will have representatives from both kind of thoughts on the same call, because I feel like as soon as somebody talks to somebody about guardianship and then they go talk to somebody about supported decision making, I know it gets very confusing. So we're trying to make that better for y'all. I also just want to say, if y'all have ideas for speakers, if you need me to bring back Anna Mackey, because we have a few other things that I want her to talk about, which will certainly be the now comp waiver, more specifically, and what that means. I will be bringing her back, just for the record. I try to give her a little time off. Adrian, you got a quick question?
I sure do. Would you mind, exactly how do we sign up for the free consult with Annie?
You go to, let me just put it, the website in the chat
Chat?
is at bobbydodd.org. So you go to the website and then you click on programs. And then you click on benefits navigation.
Okay.
And there it'll be like, claim your free consultation here. Yep. Do
But
that.
I will tell you that I learn something every time I hear Anna speak. So please take advantage of that opportunity. If there, and like I was going to say, is if you have other ideas for people that you want to hear from, please let me know. I have a lot of connections, and so does Anna, so I can find people for you if you want the right sessions. This was great. As
And
always, I can't thank you enough.
thank you so much. And that's just a last remark on the consultations. The consultation doesn't have to be about family support. It can be about anything. You don't have to be in our region. You can, anybody who has a question about anything, we have delved, beyond what the norm is with benefits navigation. I do a lot of Medicaid reinstatement. I do a lot of transitioning into life care planning kinds of issues. So it can be anything. Sure.
So take
Yeah.
advantage. She's telling you to take advantage. So we will have her back. A couple of people have said it, actually texted me saying, bring her back. So we will bring
I'll
you
do
back.
more voices for you. That's my retirement plan. I'm going to video my cats and do voices. That's what it's going to be. So.
And we wish y'all a good night and a happy week.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.